Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
Hey, sweetheart, I'm all ready for you with my gin and tonic.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I want to talk about a subject of something that happened earlier this week. There was a Lebanese man who pretended to be a Orthodox Jew, and he basically found out, like they found out that he wasn't Jewish by the wife found another passport of his, and they found a gun and they found a knife, and she basically freaked out and called the cops. The FBI was notified, and they did all this research and found out that like he really wasn't a Jew. He was from Lebanon, and that he basically was hiding that fact and was trying to join the Orthodox community, but there was no malicious intent. They couldn't find anything.
First of all, where did you read this?
This was all over the news. You can go on Yeshiva World. You can go on you can go on Mideastern 24. You can go Israel National News. You can go Aish.com. You know, there's like there's a lot of places that were talking about it. It was a news that broke out earlier this week.
Okay, was it on the mainstream news? Because I usually watch the news. I didn't see it on mainstream news. Was it on mainstream?
It wasn't very
mainstream news.
I wouldn't say it's very mainstream. Like if what you wouldn't find it on Fox or CNN.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah,
this is something that like it was interesting and odd, because you have this person who's trying to be an Orthodox Jew without going through the standard Gayers process. And I just think it's like, well, what goes through their mind? Like, what do you think is going to happen? You know,
I got a few questions here. There's a lot of strange things happening. First of all, before you marry anybody, a normal person checks into their family, wants to meet their parents, wants to meet their siblings, inquires about who they are. I mean, it sounds to me like to marry someone like this, who's seems to be leading a double life, would be to mean that this woman, I don't like to blame the victim, don't get me wrong, but hey, didn't she check, like I said, meet the family first, see what's going on? That was number one. Number two, if someone is not truly, there's Orthodox Judaism, I shouldn't say Orthodox Judaism, I should say Torah Judaism, Torah observant Judaism. Someone who's really from, there would be certain things that they would know. In other words, let's put it this way, our religious observances as Torah observant Jews are very detailed and at times complicated, to the point that only someone who's truly an Orthodox Jew would be aware of all the ins and outs and complications. And someone who's not Jewish, there'd be some very strange things going on. In other words, there would be a lot of knowledge that they wouldn't have, and a lot of things that they were doing that wouldn't make sense, which would also be a red flag, which leads me to believe, I have a feeling that this woman might have just, how can I say it, like a mail order bride, you know what I mean? Married this guy like sight unseen, which sometimes, I hate to say it, there are people that do that, and the results are usually the same, that they usually regret it afterwards. So I'm wondering about like how old she was. Was she a mature woman who knew what she was doing? Was she a young woman who did not know what she was doing and just thought this guy looked good on paper or whatever, and just married him, like I said, sight unseen? Also, if I came across my spouse having a different passport and a gun, I would certainly suspect the worst. Now, to say that he was an honest person and that he was not some sort of, say, Al-Qaeda operative or some sort of terrorist who's trying to get into the Orthodox Jewish community to find information to say, oh, he's okay. No, I don't believe that. I have a feeling that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and that it could be that the authorities don't want the public to know.
Yeah, I don't. So one of the comments that I find very interesting was made by the FBI, and was saying that they found that he himself was just a very lonely person. And it's interesting enough where it's like, I'm just trying to play like a, not devil's advocate here, but like a different perspective, that like, would someone be so lonely and try to join a community? There would have to be something that goes through his mind. I would love to interview him. I'd love to speak to him, to ask him, like, what is going through your mind? What were you thinking? Like, why would you do something like this?
I'm sure the FBI would like and has interrogated him too and asked him those questions too. But I have a feeling, I'm sure we've all seen enough police, like Law and Order, et cetera, NCIS, and all that, to know that the law enforcement authorities don't give all the information to the public. They purposely withhold information, because if they were to reveal everything that they have discovered in their investigation, then it would actually scare off other people, like other bad guys that are involved. Whereas if they play it cool and say, oh, there's nothing wrong with him, there's no threat, if they make that as an official statement, then we know that kind of like can cause the bad guys to let down their guard. And that way the authorities can continue to do like their clandestine investigations to find out what's really going on. They don't, it's obvious. I mean, they don't tell the public everything for very, very good reasons. And I have a sneaking suspicion that that's what's going here. I don't think this guy is as innocent and non-threatening as it seems. But this just seems very, very strange about someone like marrying someone like this without, like I said, meeting their family, getting to know who they are. Like, what? There's a lot of unanswered questions. I think there's a lot of stuff that went on here that obviously it's not for public information.
That's why for me it's more of like, I want to believe that it's a little more innocent than what a lot of people would assume, just because I feel like it's more interesting story that way to me. Because if you have the whole idea that, oh, he was just some kind of spy terrorist, blah blah blah, I don't know, that seems kind of boring and like mundane. Like, we've seen this story before, come on, can't we have something a little more interesting, a little spicier? Like, he's not a terrorist, he's just really a decent guy who kind of like was out on his luck and wanted to go for a Jewish girl, and then decided to like play along with this whole situation. And one thing led to another, and now the FBI is questioning him. He's like, I just wanted to live a nice, happy Jewish life. I didn't realize I'd get to this.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm just, like I said, I'm just wondering. Like I said, there's, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that once they remembered that he was doing that didn't jive with being an Orthodox Jew, that he maybe wasn't with. I'll tell you a funny story. You remember Oliver Shalom, the talk show host Tom Marr?
Yeah, I think so.
He was a news analyst and talk show host. Okay.
Yes.
And somebody called one time. He was really good. He could recognize when people were faking.
Mm-hmm.
And he could recognize the tone in their voice. Sometimes they had some callers who they knew the Tom Marr didn't want this caller on their show, and they gave a different name, and they tried to disguise their voice. And Tom Marr immediately said, okay, I recognize your voice. I know what you're trying to pull. And he would just cut them off. So one time some guy called, says, he's an Orthodox Jew, and he thinks the Palestinians are right and are entitled to the land of Israel. It really, was, the whole 9 yards. So Tom Marr says to the guy, I don't believe you're an Orthodox Jew. In fact, I don't believe you're Jewish at all. He says, I think you're a plant. And so he says, of course. So the other guy answers, oh, of course I'm Jewish. So Tom Moore said to the guy, okay, tell me something then. Do you remember your bris? And the guy said, of course I do. And Tom Moore said, aha, busted.
That's hilarious. That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, so like that's why it turns out the guy was actually on a dating app that he was looking for someone online, and that's how like he found his his wife, I guess, so to speak. It's just, has any stories like this ever happened, like when you were younger, that like someone claimed to be who they were and then it was a whole giant like hullabaloo?
Yes, as a matter of fact, someone very close to us
Oh, really?
married somebody, if you remember,
I
who was
don't.
very charming and a lot of fun to be with. And as a matter of fact, he came to our house, and Tati and I were also pretty much, taken in by this guy. And then I don't want to say who, but that person found out later on after she married him that, hey, he misrepresented himself.
Why?
Totally.
As what?
He said, I think he said he was in, he said a few things. I think he said he was in law school, or he had some sort of degree, and he he had, well, he converted to Judaism, but his it was like really like questionable. There were a lot of
Mhm.
things about his background that she found out later were not true.
Like what? Explain.
I said, like I said, his degree, his so-called degree, and
So
that's I don't know. There's some other small things I think, but anyway. So it was. I'm sure. I tell you, I'm sure there are many people. This is why I don't like this idea of the online dating sites. I mean, I've heard pro and con. I've heard from people who did find a wonderful person on these dating sites. I've spoken to other people who, just the opposite. And that's why I think it's always best to meet people through friends and family who know these people personally. There's also even shotgunners. Even shotgunners will, and I hate to say it, I've heard cases of shotgunners lying about somebody. Like I've heard horror stories about someone being matched up with someone who was a full-blown schizophrenic and under a psychiatrist's care, and the shotgunner left out that information to the family.
what?
I think that when it comes to marriage, you just have to look, ask a lot of questions, look very carefully, meet the family. Actually, Rambam wrote a very interesting treatise on dating
Mm.
of his time. And this treatise, I mean, he was addressing this treatise to what we would call today teenagers. Because in those days, people got married somewhere between, 13 to 18, maybe 19 or 20. And the way that, a lot of from people date now is that they don't hang out too much with each other. They go out on a few dates, and they, like the Rebbe, it's been said that it's not good for the couple to get too close before they're married, because they're afraid of, maybe losing control of yourself, and maybe how can I say, getting too close, getting too intimate with each other before marriage. But Rambam said in a certain respect, said the opposite. He said the two of you should go to each other's house. You should spend days there. You should spend like morning, noon, and night, hang around there as much as possible. Look at the way the family is interacting. Do they treat each other with respect? Is it a relaxed atmosphere in the house? Are they critical of each other? And you should know that you are going to be part of those dynamics.
Yeah, that's kind of why this story that we talked about was so weird, because they didn't do that. but I think they're gonna. And what's crazy is that it was done in that it was a Syrian, um, it was a Syrian wedding that took place, and the Syrians are usually very strict and they don't allow converts or anything like that.
I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Also, with news stories in general, you can't always go by news stories. There's a lot of, I don't know. There's a lot of how can I say it? There's a, there's a lot of
A lot of fluff
inaccuracies.
and
Yeah,
accuracy. They're just trying to like
yeah.
they're trying to be first. They're trying to do whatever,
Mhm.
you know.
Well, I remember, when I was a finalist in that pageant when I was 14 years old, and after the pageant was over, my mother and I were reading the newspaper accounts of the pageant, and she and I looked at each other and said, "What in the world? Where was this?"
Wow.
Because the way that they described the pageant, like you said, was blown way out of proportion of the way it really was.
Jeez. That's again, like that's why people don't trust the media in general. I think it's gotten worse nowadays, but I think it's like they're trying to be first. They're trying to be more, spectacular. They're trying to be more, out there. I remember also you telling me stories when we were younger about some people who would be mishlachim, and that they would pretend to be mishlachim, and they really weren't, like they weren't who they said they were, and that's why in
Ooh,
Baltimore
yeah.
they have all
Hmm.
these, like you have to have like a letter from the Aguda.
Yes, I remember what happened was there was this couple that were going around the Jewish community, uh, dark complexioned people, like look like me basically, dark hair, dark eyes, olive skin, And the man had a letter that he claimed was from a rabbi that he had swallowed rat poisoning and that he had gotten very sick from it and he couldn't work. And so he and his wife were, going around the Jewish community collecting money. I noticed very interesting about this couple. First of all, they were riding around on these two very nice bicycles that did not look like cheap bicycles. And the wife, they weren't able to look me in the eye. As they were telling me their story, the wife kept looking to the right, to the left. The husband kept looking at the paper. They would not look me in the eye. And I thought something was very strange about them, but I had some change on me. I didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have any money. This was the good old days when we were living from hand to mouth, and I didn't have much money, but I did have some change. So I gave them some change. And then 30 years went by. This is really funny. 30 years went by. And one day, I don't know, was it 30? No, it was, yeah, it had to be like, yeah, it was a long time went by. Yeah. And I was getting dressed one morning. All of a sudden, for some reason, I thought back to these people. And I went, ooh. I said, I have a feeling they were fakes. Oh well,
That's a
I'm glad
delay,
I didn't.
delayed response.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad I didn't give that. That happens to me a lot. I don't get things when they happen. I think then years later, I think back to it and I go, oh yes. So anyway, so that morning of all things, I happened to be walking down the street. Same couple came up to me to ask me for a donation.
Oh
So I
wow.
said, oh, I remember you guys. Remember you guys from 30 years ago. Still that rat poisoning, huh? 30 years later. And so the husband says, oh, yes. He goes, it takes a long time for it to work its way out of the body. I said, oh, yeah, I'm sure. I said, well, I don't have any money on me, but I said, I took out a pencil and paper. I said, here, I said, where are you staying? And I'll mail you a check. Well, we're really not staying in any one place. I said, well, are you, what about the rabbi that gave you that letter? Can I send the check to him? Oh, well, we really aren't constant a lot. We move around a lot. And so I said to them, oh, come on. You can't be moving around so much that you don't have an address. I said, you can't be moving around like gypsies, can you? And when I said the word gypsies, they both went, oh, gypsies, how could you possibly say we're gypsies? gypsies. And I went, I thought to myself, So I said, well, I'm sorry, but if you can't give me an address, I can't help you. So I immediately went into one of the houses, it was on Williamson. And I was watching them. It was a friend of mine that lived on Williamson. I went to her house. I told her what happened. And I was pointing out these people to her as they were walking down the street. So she gave me her phone and she gave me the number of each house that they were going to. And I called, as I could see as they were coming up to the house, I was calling each person at the house and said, don't give these people that are at your door any money. They're gypsies. And they were going, I could watch them from the window going from house to house to house to house as I'm on the phone calling each house, and each house they're just closing the door and walking away, closing the door and walking away. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine who had moved recently from New York. And I told her about this couple and she goes, so she described them to me. I said, yes. I said, that's a couple. She goes, they are gypsies. She said, they showed up in this like little community where she lived in upstate New York and the police chased them out.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
it was after that that Rabbi Heinemann instituted that rule that all, Mishloachim must come to him and get a letter from him. And that we're not to, it's not, that it was said that we had to do this. But this was one of the reasons.
Yeah, we after this fun story, we gotta go. But yeah, there was a similar story that happened when it was we were at Shul on Purim, and there were these people outside collecting money, and they didn't. It was weird. It was like a little boy, like must have been 14, and he was collecting money, and people were giving him money, and then one person was suspicious and asked him, "Hey, do you know Shema?" And the kid was like, "What?" And he was confused. And we're like, "Do you know Shema?" And he just didn't know. And he quickly ran, and he ran into a van filled with people, and the van just like sped off.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Ay. See, we Orthodox Jews have our code words.
Yeah. All right. Well, this episode's been great. Thank you so much for joining me, Emma. I love you. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Sweetheart. You too. Have a great Shabbos, darling.
Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother episode. Please like and subscribe our Facebook group at Jewish Boy Calls His Mother podcast, and check out our YouTube channel, Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I know you'd like it, and my mother would appreciate it too.